The first time I saw my son after 27 years, he was standing in the doorway of my hospital room, clutching something small in his fist. My heart stopped. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head thousands of times, but nothing prepared me for the way his eyes, his father's eyes, looked straight through me, as if measuring every mistake I'd ever made. "Mom," he said, the word hanging between us like a question. No warmth, no hatred, just uncertainty. The machines tracking my heartbeat betrayed my calm exterior. A nurse glanced in, concerned by the sudden acceleration of beeps, then disappeared when she saw I had a visitor. In the sterile white room, my son's dark blue suit made him look like he'd stepped out of another world, a successful world I'd never been part of. They told me I had 3 months to live, maybe 4, if the treatments worked. Stage 4. Pancreatic cancer doesn't negotiate terms. I'd made peace with dying alone, had already arranged for my modest belongings to be donated. Then Sarah, my hospice nurse, asked if there was anyone I wanted to contact. I'd said no, reflexively, the way I had for decades. But that night, staring at the ceiling as pain radiated through my abdomen, I whispered his name. Daniel. I never expected Sarah to find him. Never expected her to take it upon herself to track down my only child, the baby I'd left behind when I was barely more than a child myself. Never expected that the successful Manhattan attorney she found would agree to fly to St. Joseph's Hospital in rural Michigan to see a dying woman he didn't remember. But there, he stood, 47 years old, salt and pepper hair, clean-shaven, a thin wedding band on his left hand, a life fully formed without me in it. "You look like him," I said, my voice scraping against my dry throat. "Your father." Daniel shifted his weight, his expression unreadable. That's what they all said growing up. I wouldn't know. The words weren't meant to wound. They were just facts, but they cut deeper than any scalpel. Of course he wouldn't know. I'd taken that from him too. "Would you like to sit?" I gestured to the vinyl chair beside my bed, suddenly aware of how small I'd become, how the hospital gown draped over my skeletal frame, how my once auburn hair had thinned to wispy gray strands. I'd always imagined I'd fix myself up if this day ever came. Put on makeup, wear something nice, not meet my son as a husk of a woman tethered to morphine. Daniel hesitated, then sat, his expensive wool suit creasing at the knees. He placed his hands on his thighs, and I noticed how manicured his nails were, how clean. My own hands were spotted with age, blue veins prominent beneath tissue paper skin. "Your nurse, Sarah, she said you're..." He trailed off, unwilling to speak the diagnosis aloud. "Dying?" I finished for him. "Yes." Quickly, they tell me. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Why now? After all this time? I had rehearsed an answer for this too. Something about regrets and second chances. Something profound. Instead, what came out was the raw truth. Because I'm afraid. His eyebrows lifted slightly. Whatever he'd expected. Excuses, apologies, a deathbed manipulation. It wasn't this. "Afraid of dying?" he asked. I shook my head, wincing at the pain the small movement caused. "Afraid of dying without..." My voice broke, and for the first time since he'd entered the room, I looked away. "Without telling you why. You deserve to know why." The silence stretched between us, filled only by the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the distant sounds of the hospital corridor. A food cart rattled past. Someone laughed, life continuing its mundane miracle just outside the door. "I'm not sure I want to know," Daniel finally said. His voice was steady, controlled, but his fingers had curled into loose fists on his thighs. "I built a life without that knowledge." "A good life?" I asked, unable to stop myself. A sad smile flickered across his face. "Yes, a very good life." Pride and grief collided in my chest. "I'm glad. Are you?" The question hung sharp between us. Was I glad my son had thrived without me? That the gaping wound of my absence hadn't defined him? That the choice I'd made, the choice that shattered me, hadn't shattered him too? "Yes," I whispered. "More than you can know." Daniel's eyes, so like his father's, studied me. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be truly seen. For decades I'd been invisible, moving through the world like a ghost, leaving no impression. But now my son was looking at me, and even if what he saw was broken and failing, at least I existed to him. "I have children," he said suddenly. 2 daughters, 13 and 16. Grandchildren. The word bloomed in my mind, beautiful, and impossible. What are their names? Emma and Olivia. Pretty names, I said, trying to imagine their faces. Did they have my eyes? My mother's smile? Do they know about me? Daniel leaned back in the chair, his expression guarded again. There was nothing to know. The machines beeped faster. A tear slipped down my cheek, the first I'd allowed myself. No, I suppose there wasn't. My name is Eleanor Mitchell. I've lived in Lansing, Michigan for the past 22 years, in a one-bedroom apartment above Genovese's bakery. The smell of fresh bread has been my alarm clock every morning at 4:30. I've worked as the office manager at Lakeside Family Dental since I arrived in town, lying about my credentials, my past, my entire life to Dr. Marshall when he hired me. He never checked. People rarely do when you're a plain-looking woman who keeps to herself. My routine has been the same for over 2 decades. Work, home, sleep, repeat. No friends, just acquaintances. No family, just memories. My apartment is neat, impersonal, like a hotel room someone's been staying in too long. The only photograph I own stays hidden in my bedside drawer. A hospital Polaroid of me holding a red-faced newborn, both of us looking shocked to find ourselves suddenly existing together. Cancer changed nothing and everything about my life. I still wake to the smell of bread, still make my coffee the same way, still walk to work when weather permits. But now I swallow 19 pills a day. Now I wear a beanie to cover my patchy scalp. Now I count my life in months rather than years. Doctor, Marshall offered to let me work until I couldn't anymore. Your family, Eleanor, he'd said, though he knows nothing about me. Not really. Still, I accepted his kindness. Work gives structure to my dying. Without it, I'd just be waiting. When the pain got worse, Sarah started coming to my apartment 3 times a week. She's young, maybe 30, with a no-nonsense attitude and gentle hands. She never pitied me, which I appreciated. She'd check my vitals, adjust my medications, help me bathe when I could no longer manage alone. Sometimes she'd bring me soup from the deli down the street, claiming they'd given her too much, though I suspect she paid for it herself. You don't talk about your people, she said one evening, changing the bandage where my port had become infected. Is there nobody we should call? I winced as the adhesive pulled at my skin. No people to call. Sarah made a non-committal sound, the kind medical professionals make when they're thinking, but don't want to say what they're thinking. Everyone has people, she pressed, not looking at me as she applied antibiotic ointment to the angry red skin around my port. Not me, I said. But that night, unable to sleep through the pain, I found myself thinking about Daniel. My beautiful boy with his serious eyes and solemn smile. Would he be tall now? Would he laugh easily or carefully? Did he wonder about me? Or had he sealed away that wound so completely that it never troubled him? I'd always told myself that my absence was a gift to him, that he was better off without a mother who was broken in ways that couldn't be fixed. That's the story I'd repeated to myself for 27 years. I left because I loved him. I stayed away because I loved him. But as death approached, the story rang hollow. I have a son, I told Sarah during her next visit. The words felt foreign on my tongue. I hadn't spoken them aloud since I'd arrived in Lansing. I haven't seen him since he was 20. Sarah paused in the middle of taking my blood pressure. Is that something you'd want to change? I considered lying. Then I nodded. Tell me about him, she said, resuming her work. What could I say? That I'd left him sleeping in his dorm room after helping him move in for his sophomore year of college? That I'd kissed his forehead, whispered, "I love you," and walked out of his life? That I'd called once a month for a year, then less and less until I stopped entirely? That I'd sent birthday cards with no return address until he turned 25, then couldn't bear the one-sided communication any longer? His name is Daniel, I said instead. He'd be 47 now. Sarah wrote down my blood pressure, frowning slightly at the numbers. Do you know where he is? I shook my head. We haven't had contact in decades. Would you like me to try to find him? The question startled me. How would you do that? She shrugged. It's not as hard as it used to be. Social media, public records. If he hasn't changed his name, it shouldn't be too difficult. He wouldn't want to see me. I was certain of this. What child would want to reunite with the mother who abandoned him? Maybe, Sarah agreed. But shouldn't that be his choice to make? I didn't answer, and she didn't press. But the next time she came, she had a printed page with her. Daniel Mitchell, Attorney at Callahan and Wyatt in New York, she said, handing me the paper. It was a professional biography, alongside a photograph of a handsome middle-aged man in a tailored suit. He specializes in corporate litigation. Graduated from Columbia Law. There's an email address and office phone number. My hands trembled as I stared at the image of my son. He looked successful, confident, complete. I can't, I whispered. I think you can, Sarah said gently. But if you prefer, I could reach out on your behalf. Medical situations sometimes make these connections easier, less pressure. I couldn't tear my eyes from Daniel's photograph. He looks happy. All the more reason he might be in a place to hear from you. I handed the paper back to her. What would you even say? Sarah's expression softened. The truth, that you're ill, that you'd like to see him if he's willing, that there's not much time. The thought of my son receiving such news from a stranger made my stomach clench. But the alternative, him never knowing I'd wanted to make amends, never having the chance to refuse forgiveness, seemed suddenly worse. Okay, I said quietly, but don't pressure him. If he says no, that's the end of it. Sarah nodded. Of course. For a week I jumped every time my phone rang, but it never was Daniel. Eventually I accepted that he'd made his decision, and I couldn't blame him. I tried to return to my quiet routine of dying, to make peace with the choices that had led me here. Then, 2 weeks after Sarah had sent her message, my phone rang at 9:17 p.m. Ms. Mitchell? An unfamiliar male voice. This is Daniel, your son. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Are you there? He asked, his tone businesslike. Yes, I managed. Yes, I'm here. Your nurse contacted my office. She says you're ill. Yes. A pause. And you'd like to see me. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes, but only if... I'll be there Friday, he interrupted. I have meetings until Thursday afternoon. The hospital has the details. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat motionless, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. My son was coming. I had 3 days to figure out what to say to him. 3 days to prepare for the rejection I deserved. What do you say to a child you abandoned? What explanation could possibly suffice? The truth, I decided. After a lifetime of lies and evasions, I owed him that much. Whether he accepted it or not was beyond my control. I never meant to stay away forever, I told Daniel, my voice barely audible over the hospital sounds. Just long enough to get better, to become someone worthy of being your mother. Daniel's expression remained neutral, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the slight tightening around his eyes. Professional detachment, the kind lawyers must perfect. And did you get better? I looked down at my skeletal hands. No, I got lost instead. He nodded once as if confirming a suspicion. The nurse, Sarah, she said you have pancreatic cancer. Stage 4, metastasized to my liver. Prognosis? Clinical. Detached. Protecting himself. A few months. Less. Probably. Daniel stood abruptly, walked to the window and stared out at the parking lot. His back to me, he asked. Why did you leave? The question I'd been dreading. The answer I'd been rehearsing. I was broken, I said simply. After your father died, something inside me broke. I thought I could hold it together for you. I tried for so long. 20 years, he said, still facing the window. You managed 20 years before deciding motherhood was too difficult. The unfairness of his assessment stung, but I had no right to defend myself. In his position, I would believe the same. That's not... I stopped myself. What was the point in correcting his perception? The outcome was the same regardless of my reasons. I had abandoned my child. I'm sorry, I said instead. Daniel turned to face me, his expression still carefully controlled. Do you know what happened after you left? I shook my head. I called your dorm for months. Your roommate said you were fine, just busy. Then one day someone else answered, said you'd moved off campus. The university wouldn't give me information. I sent cards to your grandparents' address, hoping they'd forward them, but I never knew if they reached you. A bitter laugh escaped him. Cards. You sent birthday cards. The way he said it made the gesture seem absurd, pathetic, and perhaps it was. I didn't know what else to do. You could have come back, he said, his voice finally betraying emotion, a quiet fury. You could have shown up at Grandma and Grandpa's house and explained why their only daughter disappeared without a word, why they had to take in their traumatized grandson who woke up to find his mother gone, Why they had to lie to their friends about where you were because they didn't know themselves. Each word was a knife twisting in my gut, worse than the cancer. They never told you? Told me what? That they asked me to leave. Daniel's composure cracked, confusion flashing across his face. What are you talking about? I closed my eyes, the memory still vivid after all these years. After I dropped you at college, I went to their house. I wasn't well. I hadn't been well for a long time. That weekend with you, helping you move, pretending everything was normal, it took everything I had. When I got to their house, I fell apart. Completely. Your grandmother found me in their bathroom. I trailed off, unwilling to describe the scene. The razor, the blood, the pills I'd already swallowed. They called an ambulance. I continued. I spent 2 months in a psychiatric facility. When I was released, your grandfather met me outside. He said I wasn't stable enough to be in your life, that I would only cause you more pain, that a clean break would be better than watching me deteriorate. He said if I truly loved you, I would let you go. Daniel stared at me, his lawyer's mask completely gone now. You expect me to believe my grandparents told you to abandon your child? They thought they were protecting you, I said quietly. And they were right. I was dangerous. To myself, maybe to you. Not physically, but the damage a suicidal mother can do to her child. I shook my head. They gave me a choice. Get help far away from Springfield and stay away until I was truly recovered. Or they would tell you everything. About my suicide attempts. About the days I couldn't get out of bed. About the nights I drank until I passed out. They would make sure you knew exactly how broken your mother was. So you chose to disappear. His voice was flat. I chose to give you what your father couldn't. A chance at a normal life. I met his eyes. Your father's death wasn't an accident, Daniel. The single car crash on an empty road at 3 a.m. The life insurance policy he'd taken out just months before. He left us both, but only one of us was old enough to recognize it for what it was. Daniel sank slowly back into the chair, the color draining from his face. No, Dad wouldn't. The police ruled it an accident, but the insurance company investigated. They found a note in his desk at work. Your grandparents paid them off to rule it accidental death, to make sure the policy paid out. That money put you through college. His hands were trembling now. You're lying. I wish I were. The machines monitoring my vitals beeped more rapidly as my heart rate increased. Robert couldn't face his depression. He thought we'd be better off with the insurance money than with him. And after he was gone, I started to believe the same thing about myself. Stop it, Daniel said sharply. Just stop. But I couldn't stop. 27 years of silence broke like a dam. When I dropped you at college, I planned to die that night. I'd arranged everything, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't leave you the way Robert had left us. So I went to your grandparents instead, thinking they'd help me get treatment while still being in your life. But they'd already lost their son to suicide. They weren't going to let their grandson lose his mother the same way. Daniel stood again, pacing the small room. Why didn't they ever tell me any of this? Why would they let me believe you just left? Because that's what we agreed was best for you, I said simply. A mother who abandoned you was better than a mother who might kill herself at any moment. Better a clean wound than watching someone you love self-destruct. That wasn't your decision to make. His voice rose, and a passing nurse glanced into the room with concern. Daniel lowered his voice. You had no right to decide what I could handle. No, I agreed. I didn't. I made the wrong choice for the right reasons, Daniel. And by the time I realized my mistake, years had passed. You were in law school, building a life. What right did I have to disrupt it with my damage? What right? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. The same right every parent has to be honest with their child, to let them decide for themselves what they can forgive. Forgiveness. The word hung in the air between us. Was that what I'd summoned him here for? To beg forgiveness before I died. I didn't ask you here to forgive me, I said, suddenly needing him to understand this. I asked you here because you deserve the truth. All of it. Even the ugly parts. Daniel stopped pacing and looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time since he'd arrived. The truth, he repeated. After a lifetime of lies. I nodded, tears blurring my vision. I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. That's the only truth that matters. He shook his head. No, the truth that matters is that you left. The truth that matters is that I spent my entire adult life believing I wasn't enough to make you stay. The pain of his words was worse than anything the cancer had inflicted. because he was right. Whatever my reasons, whatever my mental state, whatever deal I'd made with his grandparents, the outcome was the same. I had damaged my son in exactly the way I'd feared. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, the words wholly inadequate. Daniel checked his watch. "I need some air. I'll be back." He left without waiting for my response, his footsteps quick and determined on the hospital floor. Through the window, I watched him emerge into the parking lot, take out his phone, and make a call. His posture was rigid, his free hand gesticulating as he spoke, calling his wife perhaps, or a therapist, or his grandparents, still alive, apparently, and still keeping our toxic secret. I closed my eyes, exhaustion washing over me. I'd told him the truth, but it had brought no relief, not for him and not for me. Some wounds are too deep, too old to heal with mere honesty. Daniel didn't return that day, or the next. By the third day, I'd accepted that he wasn't coming back, that the shock of learning about his father's suicide and his grandparents' deception was too much on top of everything else. I didn't blame him. Some truths are better left buried, especially when unearthing them can't change the past. I was dozing, floating on a morphine cloud, when a soft knock at my door roused me. Expecting Sarah or another nurse, I was stunned to see Daniel standing there, a leather messenger bag slung over his shoulder. "You came back," I said, my voice rough with sleep and emotion. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I had to go home, to get some things, and to think." "I understand." He set his bag on the chair and remained standing. "I called Grandma and Grandpa." My heart stuttered. "What did they say?" "Grandpa couldn't talk. His Alzheimer's is pretty advanced now." Daniel's expression softened slightly, but Grandma confirmed everything. She cried, said they thought they were doing the right thing. "They were trying to protect you," I said, feeling a strange need to defend them despite everything. "By lying to me my entire adult life?" He shook his head. "That's not protection. That's control." I had no argument for that. Helen and George had always been controlling, even when Robert was alive. It was one of the many points of tension in our marriage, his inability to set boundaries with his parents. "Did they ever forward my cards?" I asked, suddenly needing to know. Daniel's jaw tightened. "No, they kept them. Grandma told me yesterday they're in a box in their attic. Every birthday, every Christmas." He looked away. "She offered to send them to me now. Do you want them?" He didn't answer directly. Instead, he unzipped his bag and removed a worn photo album. "I brought some things I thought you might want to see." My breath caught as he placed the album on the bed beside me. The cover was faded blue fabric, embroidered with the words "Daniel's Milestones." "May I?" I asked, my hands hovering over it. He nodded, his expression unreadable. With trembling fingers, I opened the album. The first page held Daniel's birth announcement, complete with his tiny footprints. I traced them gently, remembering how perfectly his feet had fit in the palm of my hand. "You were so small," I murmured. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. But your lungs were strong. The whole maternity ward heard you." A ghost of a smile touched Daniel's lips. "So I'm told." And I turned the page to find a photograph of myself holding newborn Daniel in the hospital, looking exhausted but radiant. The same photo I kept hidden in my bedside drawer, though mine was creased and faded from being handled so often. "Your father took this," I said, my voice thick with memory. He was so proud. Handed out cigars to everyone, even the nurses. Said his son was the most perfect thing in the world, and everyone should celebrate. I don't remember him being that. "Exuberant," Daniel said, sitting on the edge of the chair. "In my memories, he's always quiet, reserved. The depression changed him," I explained gently. "Before it took hold, he was full of life. He'd spin you around until you were both dizzy, then collapse on the floor laughing. He'd make up the most elaborate bedtime stories about a boy named Daniel who could fly." I swallowed hard. I wish you could have known that version of him longer. I continued through the album slowly, savoring each image. Daniel's first birthday, his face covered in cake frosting. His first day of kindergarten, sporting a Batman backpack almost as big as he was. Little League baseball, his expression serious as he clutched a bat. Middle school orchestra holding a cello awkwardly. "You played cello?" I said, surprised. "I didn't know." "For 3 years," Daniel said. "I wasn't very good." I smiled, imagining my serious boy practicing scales. "Did you enjoy it?" He considered the question as if no one had ever asked it before. Sometimes, I liked the way it felt against my chest when I played, like a heartbeat. Such a poetic observation from a man who presented himself so pragmatically. I wondered what other sensitivities he'd hidden beneath his lawyer's exterior. The album continued. High school graduation. Daniel's face leaner, but still recognizably the boy I'd known. College freshman orientation. Then, abruptly, the photos changed. No longer posed school portraits or milestone markers, but candid shots of Daniel with friends. Daniel rock climbing. Daniel on a beach, squinting into the sun. Daniel in graduation robes outside Columbia Law School, flanked by an older couple I recognized with a jolt as Helen and George, looking much more gray and frail than I remembered. "They came to your law school graduation," I said, unable to keep the wistfulness from my voice. I'd imagined that day so often, sitting proudly in the audience, watching my brilliant son accept his diploma. In my fantasies, I was healthy, successful, worthy of his accomplishment. They did, Daniel confirmed. Grandpa was already showing signs of memory problems, but he held it together for the ceremony. I turned another page and froze. Daniel in a tuxedo, standing beside a beautiful woman in a wedding gown, both of them beaming. "Her name is Rachel," Daniel said quietly. "We've been married 18 years. I traced the outline of Rachel's face. This woman who had become my son's family while I lived as a ghost 2 states away. She's lovely. She's a pediatric surgeon. We met during my first year of law school, her first year of residency." A note of pride crept into his voice. "She saves children's lives. You chose someone who heals," I observed. "Someone stable." Daniel nodded, acknowledging the unspoken observation. He'd chosen someone nothing like his mother. The final pages of the album showed Daniel's family growing. Rachel pregnant, her hand resting on her swollen belly. A newborn with a shock of dark hair. Daniel holding a toddler while a slightly older girl clung to his leg. The whole family at what appeared to be a beach house, the girls now recognizable as young teenagers. "Emma and Olivia," I said, remembering the names he'd mentioned during his first visit. "They're beautiful." Emma's the oldest. She's 16, plays field hockey, wants to be an environmental engineer. Pride softened his voice. Olivia's 13. She's our artist. Paints, sculpts, writes poetry. An artist, I repeated, a lump forming in my throat. I'd loved painting once, before depression stole my ability to find beauty in anything. Does she get that from Rachel's side? Daniel hesitated. "No, that would be from you." At my surprised look, he continued. "Grandma told me you used to paint. She showed me some of your work that they kept. A landscape of the lake house. It's actually hanging in our summer home now." Tears welled in my eyes. The thought of my painting hanging in my son's house, of some small part of me being present in his life all these years, was overwhelming. "I stopped," I said, wiping at my eyes. "Painting. After your father died, I couldn't. It all seemed pointless." "That's what depression does," Daniel said, and there was no judgment in his tone now, just understanding. "It steals the things you love." I looked up at him, startled by his insight. "Yes, exactly that." He met my gaze, something shifting in his expression. "I know, Mom. I've been in therapy since college, trying to understand, trying not to repeat the patterns. You've done an amazing job," I said, gesturing to the album, to the evidence of his full, successful life. "You broke the cycle." "I'm still breaking it," he corrected. "Every day. It's work." I nodded, understanding completely. "But worth it. For them." I touched the image of my granddaughters. These beautiful children I would never know. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Why Michigan? Of all places, why did you come here?" The question caught me off guard. "It was far enough away that I wouldn't be tempted to interfere in your life. And," I hesitated, unsure whether to share the full truth. "And?" he prompted. "This is where your father and I honeymooned. Harbor Springs. We spent a week in a little cabin on Lake Michigan. It was the happiest time of our lives." I smiled at the memory. "Robert taught me to skip stones. We talked about the family we'd have someday, made all these grand plans. So you came to be close to that memory?" "I came to be close to him," I admitted, "to the version of him that existed before the depression took him away, and to punish myself, I think. To live in the shadow of what might have been." Daniel absorbed this, his expression thoughtful. I inherited his depression, the genetic legacy. He said it matter-of-factly. Had my first major episode junior year of college. Right after you... He didn't finish the sentence. Shame flooded me. After I abandoned you. He nodded once. The timing wasn't coincidental. I'm so sorry, Daniel. The words were woefully inadequate. If I had known... You couldn't have known, he interrupted. Just like I couldn't have known what you were going through when Dad died. We were both caught in it, Mom. The family disease. The way he said Mom, with genuine feeling, rather than as a mere designation, made my heart contract painfully. It was more than I deserved. But I found help, he continued. The right medication, the right therapist, and later, the right partner. He closed the photo album gently. I had resources you didn't have, support you didn't have. 4 days later, I was back in my apartment above the bakery. The hospital could do nothing more for me medically, and I'd refused hospice care. I want to die in my own space, I'd told Sarah, who had reluctantly agreed to continue checking on me at home. Daniel had returned to New York the day after showing me the photo album, promising to come back the following weekend. I didn't entirely believe him, but the fact that he'd said it at all felt like more than I deserved. On Wednesday evening, my buzzer rang. Assuming it was Sarah for her scheduled visit, I pressed the button to unlock the street entrance without asking who it was. I was sitting by the window, wrapped in a blanket despite the summer heat. The cold was internal now, a chill that no external warmth could touch. I didn't bother to get up when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Sarah had a key, but when the knock came, it was firmer than her usual gentle tap. I turned to see an elegant older woman standing in my doorway, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob, her posture rigid. "Hello, Eleanor," she said, her voice exactly as I remembered. Cultured, controlled, with an underlying steel. "Helen," I whispered, shock rendering me nearly speechless. My former mother-in-law stepped into my apartment without waiting for an invitation, her critical gaze sweeping the small space. I saw it through her eyes, the sparse furnishings, the faded curtains, the collection of paperbacks that constituted my only luxury, a life lived in suspended animation. "So, this is where you've been hiding," she said, setting her designer handbag on my kitchen counter. "All these years." I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders, suddenly conscious of how thin I'd become, how the cancer had hollowed me out. "How did you find me?" "Daniel, of course." She removed her linen blazer and draped it carefully over the back of my kitchen chair. "He called me after his first visit, quite distraught. A wave of nausea that had nothing to do with my illness washed over me. You had no right to come here." Helen's eyebrows rose. "No right? That's rich. Coming from you." She glanced around again. "May I sit? Or is hospitality too much to expect?" Without waiting for an answer, she took the seat opposite mine, crossing her legs primly at the ankle. At 78, Helen Winthrop Mitchell was still formidable, still perfectly put together, still terrifying in her composure. "What do you want, Helen?" I asked, too exhausted for pretense. "To see for myself," she replied. "To confirm what Daniel told us about your condition." "Well, now you've seen. Cancer, terminal, mystery solved." I tried to infuse my voice with strength, but it came out brittle. "You can go back to Springfield with a clear conscience." Helen studied me, her expression unreadable. "You told him about Robert?" "Yes." "And about our arrangement?" "Yes." She nodded slowly. "I see. And did you also tell him that we offered to help you get treatment? That we offered to pay for the best psychiatric care available? That we begged you to get help?" I looked away. It wasn't relevant. Wasn't relevant. Helen's voice rose slightly. "You painted us as villains who banished you from your son's life, when in reality, we gave you every opportunity to get the help you needed while maintaining a relationship with Daniel. It was you who chose to leave completely. You told me I couldn't see him until I was well," I countered, memories flooding back. The sterile conference room at the psychiatric facility, George's grim face, Helen's ultimatum. "You knew that might never happen. We knew you needed motivation to try." Helen's careful composure cracked. "My God, Eleanor. You tried to kill yourself 3 times after Robert died. 3 times. We were terrified you'd succeed, and Daniel would lose both parents. We were trying to give you a reason to live." The truth of her words hit me with physical force. Had I misremembered? Misunderstood? The fog of depression had been so thick then, coloring everything in shades of despair. You said a clean break would be better for him, I insisted, clinging to the narrative I'd built. If you couldn't commit to getting better, yes. Helen's eyes filled with tears, the first I'd ever seen from this stoic woman. We were trying to save you both. The weight of 27 years of misunderstanding settled on my chest, heavier than the cancer growing there. Had I thrown away my relationship with my son because of a depressive distortion? Had I been the author of my own exile? Why are you here, Helen? I asked again, my voice barely audible. To gloat? To make sure I know how completely I failed my son before I die? Helen wiped her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I'm here because Daniel asked me to come, because he's trying to make sense of all this. And he thought... She stopped, composing herself. He thought hearing both sides might help him understand. And George? George barely recognizes me on good days, she said, a deep sadness settling over her features. The Alzheimer's has taken almost everything, but he would have come if he could. Despite everything, Eleanor, we never hated you. We mourned you, as if we'd lost both our children. Something inside me, some hardened defensive part, began to crack. I never meant to stay away forever, I whispered, echoing what I'd told Daniel. I just needed time to get better, but I never did. And then so much time had passed, I thought it was too late. It's never too late to be a mother, Helen said, her voice gentler than I'd ever heard it. Even an imperfect one. I laughed bitterly. Says the woman who helped raise my son after I abandoned him. You've been more of a mother to Daniel than I ever was. I've been a grandmother, she corrected. It's not the same. He needed you, Eleanor. He still does. He has a good life without me, I countered. A successful career, a beautiful family. Yes, he does, Helen agreed. And a hole in his heart that all his success can't fill. Do you know what he asked me the night of his wedding? He asked me if I thought you would have been proud of him. Her voice broke. A 30-year-old man, brilliant, accomplished, about to marry the love of his life, and all he wanted to know was whether the mother who left him would approve. Tears streamed down my face. The image of Daniel on his wedding day, thinking of me despite everything, was unbearable. What did you tell him? I told him that wherever you were, I knew you would be proud, that no mother could help but be proud of the man he'd become. Helen reached into her bag and removed an envelope, yellowed with age. I also gave him this, the letter you wrote before you left the hospital, the one you made me promise to give him if you succeeded in your next attempt. I stared at the envelope, paralyzed. You kept it all these years. I kept everything, Eleanor. Every card you sent, every letter, every scrap of you that might someday help Daniel understand why his mother disappeared. She placed the envelope on the table between us. He never opened it. Said he wasn't ready, but he asked me to bring it to you. Said maybe it was time for you to read it to him yourself. My hand shook as I picked up the envelope. My own handwriting, more confident than it was now, had addressed it simply to Daniel. I'd written it during my darkest days, convinced I would not survive my grief over Robert, terrified of leaving my son with nothing but questions. Is he coming back? I asked, hope and dread warring within me. This weekend, Helen confirmed, with Rachel and the girls. The shock must have shown on my face. He wants them to meet you, Helen explained. He feels they deserve to know their grandmother, however briefly. I felt the room spin, my fragile equilibrium completely shattered. My grandchildren, these girls I'd only seen in photographs, were coming here, to my shabby apartment, to meet their dying grandmother? No, I said, panic rising. No, they can't come here. Not like this. Not with me like this. Helen's expression softened with something like compassion. Eleanor, they don't care what you look like or where you live. They just want to meet you. I'm dying, I said, as if she might have somehow missed this fact. What's the point in meeting me now? It will only confuse them, hurt them when I'm gone. The point is that you're their family, Helen said firmly. The point is that Daniel has decided they should know you. And after everything, don't you think he deserves to make that decision? Her words struck home. Who was I to deny Daniel anything? What right did I have to refuse this gesture, however painful or humiliating it might be for me? I don't know what to say to them, I whispered. How to explain who I am, why I've never been in their lives. You'll find the words, Helen said, rising to her feet, just as you'll find the words to read that letter to Daniel. She put her blazer back on, smoothing the fabric with practiced hands. "You have 2 days to prepare. I suggest you use them wisely." As she moved toward the door, I called after her. "Helen, thank you for raising him when I couldn't, for being what I failed to be." She paused, her back to me. "He's an extraordinary man, Eleanor. You would have been so proud to watch him grow." Then, without turning, she added, "I've booked a suite at the Hampton Inn by the river. Daniel and his family will be staying there as well. Text me if you need anything. My number's inside the envelope with your letter." And then she was gone, leaving me alone with a yellowed envelope, the weight of decades of misunderstandings, and the terrifying prospect of meeting the grandchildren I'd never thought I'd know. I didn't sleep that night. How could I, with Helen's revelations echoing in my mind, with the knowledge that Daniel was bringing his family to meet me? By morning, I'd made a decision. If I was going to meet my grandchildren, it wouldn't be in this apartment that felt more like a waiting room for death than a home. It wouldn't be as this hollow-eyed ghost I'd become. I called Sarah, who arrived an hour later, concerned by the urgency in my voice. "I need your help," I told her, the unopened letter from my younger self still on the table where Helen had left it. "Of course," she said, already checking my vital signs. "What's wrong? Are you in pain?" "No more than usual," I assured her. "But my son is coming back this weekend, with his wife and daughters, my grandchildren, Sarah, and my voice caught. "I need to look human for them. Not like this." I gestured at my frail body, my thinning hair, my sallow skin. Understanding dawned in Sarah's eyes. "Oh, Eleanor, can you help me, please? I want to wear something nice, do something with my hair." I touched the scarf covering my patchy scalp. "Maybe some makeup to look less terminal." Sarah smiled gently. "I'm not a miracle worker, but I think we can manage that." "What else?" "I want to meet them somewhere else. Not here." I looked around at my sparse apartment. "Somewhere pleasant. The park by the river, maybe. Or a nice restaurant, if I can manage it." "The park might be easier," Sarah suggested. "You could sit if you need to, and we could arrange for a wheelchair if you get too tired." I nodded, grateful for her practicality. "And I need a gift for them. For the girls. Something to remember me by. Do you have something in mind?" I thought about it. What could I possibly give my granddaughters that would matter? I owned so little of value. Then I remembered the box at the back of my closet, untouched for decades. "Yes," I said. "I think I do." Over the next 2 days, Sarah helped me transform. She took me to a salon that specialized in working with cancer patients, where a kind stylist fitted me with a wig that looked remarkably like my hair before it had thinned, shoulder-length auburn with delicate strands of gray. The woman showed me how to secure it comfortably and gave me a product to soothe my sensitive scalp. Sarah then took me shopping, patiently helping me try on outfits that would look nice but accommodate my frailty and the port in my chest. We settled on a blue wrap dress that brought some color to my pallid complexion and draped elegantly over my too thin frame. "You look beautiful," Sarah said, as I examined myself in the dressing room mirror. I hardly recognized the woman reflected there, not because she looked so different from my daily appearance, though she did, but because she looked like someone who belonged in the world, someone with purpose. "Thank you," I whispered, overwhelmed by her kindness. "For all of this. For finding Daniel. For everything." Sarah squeezed my hand. "This is why I do this work, Eleanor. These moments." On Friday night, I finally opened the letter. My hands trembled as I broke the seal, unfolding the paper that had been waiting 27 years to be read. My own handwriting stared back at me, firmer than it was now, but recognizably mine. "My dearest Daniel," it began. "If you're reading this, it means I've failed you in the most profound way possible. It means I've left you just as your father did, and for that, I am sorrier than any words can express. But I need you to understand something. It was never, ever, because I didn't love you enough. Depression lies, sweetheart. It lies constantly, convincingly, cruelly. It tells you that you're worthless, that you're a burden, that everyone would be better off without you. For a long time after your father died, I fought those lies. I got up every morning, made your breakfast, helped with homework, attended your games and concerts, signed permission slips, kissed your forehead at night, all while a voice inside told me I was failing you, damaging you, ruining your chance at happiness. And then, one day, I believed the voice. One day, it seemed more rational than fighting. One day I convinced myself that you would be better off with the memory of a mother who had loved you fiercely than with the reality of one who could barely function. I was wrong. I see that now, even as I write this from the hospital after my latest attempt to escape the pain. But knowing I'm wrong doesn't make the lies less convincing. It doesn't make the darkness less consuming. I'm going to try, Daniel. For you, I'm going to try one more time to get better. But if I fail, if this letter finds its way to you, please know this. You were the light of my life from the moment you were born. You were perfect and brilliant and kind, and none of this is your fault. There is nothing you could have done differently. There is nothing you should have seen or said or been that would have changed this outcome. Depression is a disease, as real as cancer or heart failure. Your father had it too. It might run in our blood, and if so, I beg you to be vigilant. Watch for the signs in yourself. Get help at the first shadow. Don't wait until the darkness is complete. I love you. I have always loved you. I will love you with my last breath and beyond, whether that breath comes decades from now after a full life, or sooner by my own hand. You are the best thing I ever did, Daniel. Never doubt that. Never. All my love. Mom. By the time I finished reading, tears streamed down my face. The letter was everything I still wanted to tell him. Everything I had tried to say in that sterile hospital room but couldn't find the words for. And here they had been all along, waiting in Helen's safekeeping. That night, for the first time since my diagnosis, I prayed. Not for healing. It was far too late for that. But for courage. Courage to face my son and his family with honesty. Courage to accept whatever forgiveness or condemnation he offered. Courage to die without the comfort of delusion or self-justification. Saturday dawned clear and mild. Sarah arrived early to help me prepare, styling the wig, applying light makeup that diminished the pallor of disease without looking unnatural, helping me into the blue dress. "Ready?" she asked when we were finished. I nodded, though ready felt like an inadequate word for facing the grandchildren I'd never known, the family I'd forfeited, the reckoning I'd avoided for 27 years. But what choice did I have? Time, that commodity I'd wasted so profligately, was now the scarcest resource of all. Sarah drove me to the riverside park we'd selected, a peaceful spot with benches overlooking the water. Though it was only a short walk from the parking area to the bench, I was grateful for the wheelchair she'd brought. My energy was precious now. I needed to conserve it for what mattered. As she wheeled me toward the chosen spot, I clutched my purse containing the letter and the gifts I'd selected for my granddaughters. The morning sun dappled through the trees, casting gentle patterns on the walkway. A pair of ducks glided by on the river. In the distance, children laughed on a playground. "Would you like me to stay?" Sarah asked as she settled me on the bench. I shook my head. This is something I need to do alone. But thank you for everything. She squeezed my shoulder. "Call when you're ready to go home. I'll be nearby." As Sarah walked away, I smoothed my dress, checking my reflection one last time in my compact mirror. The woman looking back at me was dying. Yes, but she was also fully present in a way I hadn't been for decades. The irony wasn't lost on me. It had taken terminal cancer to finally wake me from my lifelong depression. I saw them before they saw me. Daniel, tall and distinguished in casual slacks and a button-down shirt. Beside him, a slender woman with kind eyes and dark curls, Rachel, and slightly behind them, two teenage girls, one with her father's serious expression, one looking around curiously. My heart stuttered at the sight of them. My family, these strangers bound to me by blood and nothing else. What right did I have to claim them now? What could I possibly offer in the meager time remaining to me? Then Daniel spotted me, raising his hand in a tentative wave. I waved back, and they changed direction, heading toward my bench. With each step they took, I felt my carefully constructed composure threatening to crumble. But beneath the fear and grief was something else. A quiet certainty that whatever happened in the next hour would be real in a way nothing had been since I'd left Daniel at college 27 years ago. For better or worse, I was finally stepping out of the shadow existence I'd created for myself. I was finally, truly, waking up. "You look nice," Daniel said as they reached my bench. Genuine surprise in his voice. I knew what he was seeing. The transformation from the skeletal hospital patient to someone who, while still visibly ill, at least resembled a normal human being. "Thank you," I replied. my voice steadier than I expected. My nurse, Sarah, helped me. Daniel nodded, then turned to the woman beside him. Mom, this is my wife, Rachel. Rachel stepped forward, extending her hand with professional warmth. It's nice to meet you, Eleanor. Daniel's told me about your recent conversations. I took her offered hand, struck by the strength in her grip. Surgeon's hands, capable hands that saved children's lives. Thank you for coming, and for bringing your daughters. I know this must be unusual. A flicker of something, assessment perhaps, crossed Rachel's face. We believed it was important for the girls to meet you. I nodded, understanding the careful phrasing. Not we wanted, but we believed it was important. A duty, an obligation, perhaps even an educational experience in human complexity. Daniel gestured to the girls. And these are our daughters. Emma, the taller girl, stepped forward, and Olivia, the younger, followed. I looked at my granddaughters, drinking in every detail. Emma was nearly as tall as her father, with Rachel's dark curls pulled back in a practical ponytail. She wore jeans and a field hockey team sweatshirt, her expression guarded but curious. Olivia was smaller, with straight brown hair and Daniel's serious eyes. She wore a colorful dress over leggings, a camera hanging around her neck. Hello, I said, my voice suddenly thick. I'm Eleanor, your grandmother. The word felt foreign on my tongue, a title I'd forfeited long ago. Emma glanced at her father, then back at me. Hi, she said simply. Olivia tilted her head, studying me with an artist's eye. You have Dad's smile, she observed. Or I guess he has yours. A laugh escaped me, unexpected and genuine. I suppose that's true. Daniel motioned to the bench. May we sit? Please, I said, shifting slightly to make room. Daniel and Rachel sat on either side of me, the girls perching on a second bench facing ours. For a moment, no one spoke. The river flowed past, indifferent to the human drama unfolding on its banks. A jogger passed, nodding politely. So, Emma finally said, breaking the silence, are you really dying? Emma, Rachel admonished gently. It's okay, I assured her. Yes, I am. I have pancreatic cancer. It spread quite extensively. Does it hurt? Olivia asked. I considered sugarcoating the truth, then decided against it. Sometimes. The medications help. Dad said you left when he was in college. Emma continued, her direct approach reminding me so much of Daniel at that age. Why? I glanced at Daniel, who nodded slightly. He'd prepared them then, told them something of our complicated history. I was very ill, I said carefully. Not with cancer, but with depression. Do you know what that is? Both girls nodded. We learned about mental health in school, Emma explained. And Dad's always been open about it, about his own depression. This surprised me, though it shouldn't have. Of course Daniel would be honest with his daughters. Of course he would break the cycle of secrecy that had damaged our family for generations. Well, my depression was very severe after your grandfather died. I made some bad decisions. I paused, searching for words a teenager could understand. I thought your dad would be better off without me. Were you right? Olivia asked. The bluntness of the question took me aback. From the corner of my eye, I saw Daniel start to intervene, but I shook my head slightly. No, I said firmly. I was absolutely wrong. It was the biggest mistake of my life. Olivia considered this. But you never came back. No, I didn't. I took a shaky breath. By the time I realized my mistake, years had passed. Your father had built a life without me. I was afraid of disrupting that life, and I was ashamed. Shame is a powerful emotion, Rachel observed quietly. It can paralyze us. I looked at her with sudden gratitude, sensing an ally I hadn't expected. I brought something for you, I said to the girls, reaching into my purse. If you'd like to have it. I removed a small velvet pouch and a larger padded envelope. From the pouch, I extracted a delicate gold locket on a chain. This was my grandmother's, I explained, holding it up so the sunlight caught the intricate engraving. And then my mother's, and then mine. It should have been passed to your father for his wife, but I trailed off. But you took it with you, Daniel finished, his voice neutral. I nodded. It was one of the few things of value I kept. I held it out to Rachel. I'd like you to have it now, if you want it. Rachel hesitated, then accepted the locket, opening it carefully to reveal the tiny compartment inside. It's beautiful, she said softly. Thank you. From the envelope, I withdrew 2 smaller packages. each wrapped in tissue paper. "And these are for you," I said to Emma and Olivia. The girls took the packages, unwrapping them curiously. Inside each was a small painting, watercolors I'd done years ago, the only creative work I'd managed since leaving Daniel. One showed a sunrise over Lake Michigan, golden light spilling across the water. The other depicted a snow-covered forest path, sunlight filtering through bare branches. "You painted these?" Olivia asked, examining her forest scene with a practiced eye. "Yes, a long time ago. They're good," she said with professional assessment. "You understand light." "Thank you," I replied, unexpectedly moved by her artistic evaluation. "I used to paint a lot before everything happened." "Dad has one of your paintings," Emma said, still studying her sunrise. "The lake house one. It's in our summer place." "So I've heard," I said, glancing at Daniel. "Your grandmother, Helen, kept it all these years." "She kept a lot of things," Daniel said quietly. A loaded silence fell, heavy with implication. I thought of the box of birthday cards in Helen's attic, the letter she'd safeguarded for decades, the painting she'd framed and given to Daniel. "There's something else," I said, withdrawing the yellowed envelope from my purse. "Daniel, your grandmother brought this to me. It's a letter I wrote to you 27 years ago from the hospital, after my last suicide attempt." I saw Rachel reach for Daniel's hand, a gesture of support so natural it must have been practiced countless times over their years together. "I'd like to read it to you now," I continued, "if that's all right. It explains some things better than I can today." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." I carefully unfolded the letter, my hands trembling slightly. As I read the words my younger self had written, I was struck by their raw honesty, their desperate love for the son I'd abandoned. By the time I finished, tears were streaming down my face. "I'm so sorry, Daniel," I whispered, "not just for leaving, but for staying away, for convincing myself the damage was already done, that coming back would only make things worse." Daniel was silent, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Rachel wiped a tear from her cheek. Emma and Olivia sat perfectly still, absorbing the adult drama unfolding before them. "You never tried to contact me," Daniel finally said. "Not after the birthday card stopped." I shook my head. "No. I told myself it was better that way, that you'd moved on." "Did you ever look for me?" he asked. "Try to see how my life was going?" I hesitated, then decided on complete honesty. "Yes, once a year on your birthday. I'd go to the public library, use their computer to search for you online. I saw when you made partner at your law firm, when you won that big case against the pharmaceutical company." I smiled faintly. "I printed the article. I have it still. But you never reached out." "No. Even when you got sick," he pressed. "You didn't contact me then." "Sarah did." I nodded, acknowledging the truth of this. "I was still convinced you were better off without me." "That wasn't your decision to make," Daniel said, an edge entering his voice. "Not when you left, and not all the years after." "I know that now," I admitted. "I made a terrible mistake, Daniel. And then I spent 27 years compounding it." I looked at him directly, letting him see all the regret, all the love, all the truth in my eyes. "I have no right to ask your forgiveness, no right to claim you or your family. I just wanted you to know the whole truth before I die, and to tell you, one time while I still can, how very proud I am of the man you've become." Daniel looked away, his jaw tight. Rachel squeezed his hand. "You should know," I continued, "that I'm leaving everything I have to you. It's not much. Some savings, this jewelry. I touched my mother's pearls at my throat, but it's yours, as it always should have been." "I don't want your money," Daniel said sharply. "I know, but there's something else." I took a deep breath. "After your father died, his parents, your grandparents, told me the insurance company had ruled his death a suicide, but that they'd paid them off to classify it as an accident, so the policy would pay out." Daniel frowned. "Yes, you mentioned that in the hospital. What I didn't tell you is that I found documentation, letters between your grandfather and the insurance company's lawyer. I took them when I left, kept them all these years in case..." "In case what?" Daniel asked. "In case you ever needed to know the truth for certain. In case the depression that took your father, that nearly took me, ever threatened you too." I met his eyes. "In case understanding our family's history might help you fight it." Understanding dawned on Daniel's face. "That's why you asked if I'd had symptoms. You were worried about the genetic component. I nodded. Depression runs in families, Daniel. Your father's father suffered from it too, though they called it melancholy in those days. He self-medicated with alcohol. Your grandfather was terrified you'd inherit it. That's part of why he and Helen were so protective of you after I left, why they monitored you so closely. They knew I might be predisposed, Daniel said, pieces falling into place. But they never told me why. They were trying to shield you, I said gently. Just as they thought they were shielding you from my instability. They meant well, Daniel. Meaning well isn't good enough, he said, a lifetime of complicated emotions evident in his voice. Not when it comes to the truth. No, I agreed. It isn't. Olivia, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke. Is that why you take medication every morning, Dad? For depression? Daniel looked at his daughter, surprise registering on his face. Yes, sweetheart. How did you know about that? Olivia shrugged. I notice things. You never talk about it, though. Daniel exchanged a glance with Rachel, who nodded encouragingly. You're right, he admitted. I should have been more open with you both. Depression is a part of our family history. It's something I've dealt with since college, and something you should both be aware of in yourselves, like diabetes or heart disease, Rachel added. It's a health condition that can run in families, but it's treatable, and being aware of the symptoms early makes a huge difference. I watched this exchange with a mixture of pride and sorrow. Pride in Daniel's willingness to be honest with his daughters, sorrow for all the years I'd lost to silence and shame. If only Robert and I had understood. If only we'd had the language, the medical knowledge, the openness that Daniel and Rachel were modeling now. I have all the documentation, I told Daniel. Letters, medical records, everything. It's in a safety deposit box at Lansing Federal Bank. I've added your name to the account. The key and details are with my will. Daniel looked at me curiously. You kept all of this, all these years. Why? Because someday you might need to know. I met his gaze steadily. Because even when I was absent, I was still your mother. Still trying, in my broken way, to protect you. I'd like to show you something, Daniel said abruptly. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Do you recognize this? I stared at the box. Its navy velvet faded and worn at the edges. My heart quickened. Yes, I whispered. It was my engagement ring. Your father's mother gave it to him. It had been hers. Daniel nodded. I found it in Grandma's jewelry box after you left. She said you'd left it behind. I did, I confirmed. I felt I had no right to keep it, not after failing him so completely. Daniel opened the box, revealing a delicate gold band with a small diamond flanked by 2 sapphires. I remember you wearing this when I was little. I used to like how it caught the light. Tears blurred my vision. Robert saved for months to buy the sapphires. The diamond was his mother's, but he wanted to add something that was just from him. I smiled at the memory. He said blue was the color of trust and loyalty. You didn't take it with you, Daniel said, his tone making it a question. I shook my head. I left it on Helen's dresser the day I walked out of the psychiatric facility, along with my house key. I swallowed hard. I thought it was a symbolic gesture, leaving behind the life I'd failed at. Daniel considered the ring, turning the box slightly so the stones caught the sunlight. Grandma gave it to me when I got engaged to Rachel, said it was my inheritance, but I couldn't bring myself to give it to her. It wouldn't have been right, Rachel interjected gently. Too much complicated history. Too much sadness, Daniel agreed, closing the box. But you kept it, I observed. I did. He returned the box to his pocket. I wasn't sure why at the time. Emma, who had been following our conversation intently, leaned forward. So, what happens now? She asked, the directness of youth cutting through the layers of adult subtext. All eyes turned to her. What do you mean, sweetheart? Rachel asked. I mean, we came all this way to meet Grandma Eleanor, and now we have. But Emma glanced at me apologetically. Well, you're dying. So what happens between now and then? Do we just say goodbye today and that's it? Or do we try to, I don't know, be a family for however long is left? The question hung in the air, so simple and yet so profound. What did happen now? What could possibly happen in the compressed time frame my illness allowed? That's up to your father, I said quietly, looking at Daniel. I've made enough unilateral decisions for this family. Daniel was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. How much time do the doctors think you have? He finally asked. 2 months, maybe 3. I tried to keep my voice matter of fact. The cancer is spreading quickly. The pain will get worse. Eventually, I'll need hospice care. And you're here alone? Just your nurse checking in? I nodded. I've been alone most of my adult life, Daniel. I'm accustomed to it. That doesn't make it right, Olivia said unexpectedly. Nobody should die alone. I looked at my younger granddaughter, struck by her simple compassion. That's very kind, sweetheart, but I've made my peace with it. Have you? Daniel asked, his tone skeptical. Had I? I'd told myself I had. That solitary living led naturally to solitary dying, that it was fitting somehow. But sitting here with the family I'd never known, I felt the hollowness of that acceptance. No, I admitted. I suppose I haven't. Daniel exchanged a long look with Rachel, some unspoken communication passing between them. We have a guest house, he said finally, at our place in Connecticut. It's small, just 1 bedroom, but it's on the main property. You could have your privacy, but also not be alone. I stared at him, uncomprehending. What are you saying? I'm saying you should come home with us, Mom. The word mom still sounded strange on his lips, but less foreign than before. Live out whatever time you have left with family around you. I couldn't breathe, couldn't process what he was offering. Daniel, you don't owe me this. After everything, this isn't about owing, he interrupted. It's about choices. 27 years ago, you made a choice that affected both of us. Now I'm making one. Why? I asked, needing to understand. After all the pain I caused, why would you want me in your home, in your family's life? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Because I spent most of my life wondering why I wasn't enough to make you stay, wondering what was wrong with me. He held up a hand when I started to protest. I know now it wasn't about me. Your letter made that clear, and so has all our conversation since. But still, there's this hole, this unanswered question. What question? I whispered. Who were you? He said simply. Who was the woman who gave birth to me, who raised me for 20 years, who my father loved? All I have are fragments, filtered through depression and abandonment and decades of silence. The enormity of what he was saying washed over me. I had been so focused on the harm I'd done by leaving, I'd never fully considered the harm I'd done by staying away, by depriving my son of the opportunity to know me, however flawed I might be. You want to know me before I die? I asked, trying to understand. I want my daughters to know their grandmother, Daniel replied. I want them to understand where they come from. All of it. The mental illness, the artistic talent, the complexity. I want them to have more than I had. Silence and speculation. I looked at Emma and Olivia, these beautiful young women with my blood in their veins, my history in their DNA. What gift could I give them in the brief time remaining to me? What could possibly compensate for the grandmother they should have had all along? I don't know if I'm strong enough, I admitted. The cancer, it takes so much energy just to get through each day. You'd have help, Rachel said pragmatically. We have a housekeeper who comes daily. I can arrange for a nurse. And the girls and I are home most evenings and weekends. You've thought about this, I said, looking between them with dawning realization. You discussed it before coming here. We did, Rachel acknowledged. After Daniel's first visit with you, we talked as a family about what might happen next. And you all agreed to this? To having a dying woman you barely know move into your guest house? We voted, Emma said, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. It was unanimous. I looked at my elder granddaughter, wondering what Daniel had told them about me to inspire such generosity from teenagers who owed me nothing. I don't understand, I said honestly. It's simple, really, Daniel replied. Your family, complicated, messy, broken family, but family nonetheless. And in our house, that means something. I felt something shift inside me, some hardened piece of self-hatred beginning to crack. Could it really be this straightforward? Could forgiveness come not with dramatic declarations, but with the quiet offer of belonging? What about your work? I asked, searching for practical obstacles. Your life in Connecticut? I can work remotely for a while, Daniel said. My firm has been understanding about family leave since... He hesitated. Since your diagnosis, Rachel finished for him. Daniel took time off when he first learned about your illness. His partners have been supportive. This was news to me. You took time off work? For me? Daniel nodded. I needed space to process, to figure out what to do with the information. And now you've decided. Now we've decided, he corrected, including Rachel and the girls with a glance. As a family. The word family hung in the air. An invitation, a challenge, a gift I had no right to accept and no strength to refuse. There are practical considerations, I said weakly. My apartment, my few possessions. We can handle that, Daniel said firmly. Hire movers, settle your lease, whatever needs to be done. You've thought of everything, I murmured, overwhelmed. Not everything, he acknowledged. There will be challenges we haven't anticipated. Hard days, hard conversations. Your health will decline. There will be pain, physical for you, emotional for all of us. Then why? Because the alternative is worse, he interrupted. Because I've spent 27 years with a mother-shaped hole in my life, and I'm not willing to spend the rest of it wondering what might have been if I'd had the courage to try. Courage. The word resonated. What was I so afraid of? Death was coming regardless. Pain was coming regardless. The only variable was whether I would face it alone, or surrounded by the family I'd forfeited decades ago. All right, I said quietly. If you're sure, all of you, then yes. I'd like to come home with you. Home. The word felt foreign on my tongue. I hadn't had a home, a real home, since I'd left Daniel's. Everything since had been temporary, transitory, a place to exist rather than to live. Good, Daniel said with a decisive nod. We'll make the arrangements this week. I'll need to extend our hotel stay, contact a moving company, speak with your doctors about transferring your care. As he listed the practical tasks, I marveled at his efficiency, his competence. My son, the successful attorney, applying his professional skills to the problem of relocating his dying mother. There was something both heartbreaking and beautiful about it. Thank you, I whispered, though the words seemed woefully inadequate. I don't deserve this kindness. It's not about deserving, Rachel said gently. It's about family, about making the most of the time we have. I looked at my daughter-in-law, this woman who owed me nothing, yet was opening her home to me. You're very generous. She smiled slightly. I'm a surgeon. I know how precious time can be. A comfortable silence fell. In the distance, a group of children laughed as they fed ducks by the river's edge. Life continuing, generation after generation, regardless of our human dramas. Emma broke the silence. So does this mean we can call you Grandma? Or would you prefer Eleanor? The question caught me off guard. Whatever you're comfortable with. Grandma then, she decided, since that's what you are. Such a simple statement, yet it nearly undid me. I was a grandmother. Despite everything, despite all my failures and absences, I was still this child's grandmother, still connected by blood and history and DNA. I'd like that, I managed, my voice thick with emotion. Olivia, who had been quiet for some time, suddenly asked, "Will you teach me to paint?" Before, she trailed off, unable to say the words. While I'm still able, I finished for her. Yes, I'd like that very much. She nodded, satisfied. Good. I want to learn how you do light. Daniel checked his watch. We should head back to the hotel soon. Mom, is there someone who can take you home? Your nurse? Yes. Sarah is waiting for my call. I'll help you contact her, Rachel offered, standing and extending her hand to assist me. As I rose shakily from the bench, I felt the full weight of the moment. This was it, the pivot point, the line between before and after. For 27 years, I'd been a ghost. Now, for whatever brief time remained to me, I would be a mother, a grandmother, a living part of this family's story. The realization was terrifying and exhilarating. The transition happened with a swiftness that left me breathless. Within a week of our Riverside meeting, Daniel had arranged everything: medical transfers, apartment lease termination, movers for my meager possessions, even a medical transport service to fly me to Connecticut since a commercial flight was beyond my physical capabilities. You're very efficient, I observed, as he reviewed the itinerary with me the night before our departure. We were sitting in my apartment, now mostly packed into boxes, the bare walls reflecting how provisional my life here had always been. It's what I do, he replied with a slight smile. Manage complex situations. Is that how you see this? A situation to manage? Daniel considered the question. Partly, he admitted. It's how I cope. by breaking insurmountable problems into manageable tasks. You get that from your father, I said softly. He was the same way. Before the depression took hold, Daniel was silent for a moment. Tell me something else about him. Something good. From before. I closed my eyes, summoning memories I'd kept locked away for decades. He had a beautiful singing voice. Used to sing you to sleep every night. Old folk songs, Beatles tunes, whatever came to mind. He couldn't carry a tune since losing him. I don't remember that, Daniel said, sounding wistful. You were very young when the depression started changing him, I explained. Maybe 4 or 5. By the time you were in elementary school, he'd stopped singing altogether. I opened my eyes to find Daniel watching me intently. What else would you like to know? Everything, he said simply. While there's still time. We talked late into the night, Daniel asking questions about his father, about my life before and after leaving, about family history I'd never shared. It was exhausting and cathartic, this excavation of buried memories. By the time he left for his hotel, I felt hollowed out but somehow lighter, as if the act of sharing had released something long trapped inside me. The flight to Connecticut the next day was a blur of medication and semi-consciousness. I was dimly aware of being transferred to a car at the airport, of Daniel's steady presence beside me, of Rachel's voice giving quiet instructions to someone. Then I was being settled into a sunlit room with wide windows overlooking a garden. A nurse I didn't recognize checking my vital signs. "You're home, Mom," Daniel said, squeezing my hand. "Rest now. Home." The word echoed as I drifted into sleep. The days that followed established a new rhythm. Mornings were for medications and rest. Afternoons often brought visitors. Daniel working on his laptop in my room. Rachel stopping by between surgeries. The girls after school. Olivia was true to her request, bringing her sketchbook and art supplies, eager to learn whatever techniques I could teach in my increasingly limited capacity. "Tell me about this one," she said one afternoon, studying the sunrise painting I'd given Emma. We were sitting in the garden, taking advantage of a mild autumn day. "How did you capture the light on the water?" I smiled at her intensity. "It's all about layers. Thin washes of color, one over another, with the white of the paper showing through in places to create the brightest highlights." She nodded seriously, making notes in her sketchbook. "And how do you know which colors to layer?" "Observation," I said, really looking at how light interacts with water, with clouds. The world is full of colors most people never notice. Olivia glanced up at me, a smile playing at her lips. "That's what I think too. Nobody really looks." "You do," I said softly. "You have the eye. Did you always want to be an artist?" she asked, setting aside her notes. The question caught me off guard. Had I? Before marriage, before motherhood, before depression consumed everything? "Yes," I said, the realization surprising me. "I studied art in college, dreamed of painting full-time someday." I laughed softly. Life had other plans. "It's not too late," Olivia said with the beautiful certainty of youth. I didn't have the heart to point out the obvious, that my remaining time was measured in weeks, that my hands trembled too badly now for detailed work, that fatigue overwhelmed me after even short periods of focus. Instead, I just smiled. "Perhaps you're right." That evening, during my weekly call with Helen, a ritual that had developed since my arrival in Connecticut, I mentioned the conversation. "She reminds me of you," Helen said, her voice crackling slightly over the speakerphone. "The way you were before everything changed. Before Robert died, you mean?" "Yes." Helen hesitated. "Eleanor, there's something I've been wanting to tell you. Something I should have said years ago." My heart quickened. "What is it?" "I was wrong," she said simply. "George and we were wrong to separate you from Daniel. We thought we were protecting him, but we were really protecting ourselves. From the messiness, from the pain of watching you struggle." The admission hung in the air between us. After a lifetime of Helen's rigid certainty, her acknowledgement of error was staggering. "Why tell me this now?" I asked quietly. "Because I'm old, and you're dying, and what's the point of pride anymore?" Her voice wavered. "And because Daniel is happier since bringing you home. More at peace somehow. Whatever broken thing was inside him all these years, it's beginning to heal." Tears filled my eyes. "He's extraordinary, Helen. You and George raised him well. We did our best," she acknowledged. "But we made a terrible mistake in cutting you out completely. We should have found another way." "We all should have," I said. not wanting her to bear the burden alone. I should have fought harder to stay in his life. Should have gotten better help for my depression. So much should have, Helen murmured. Too late for all of it now. Not too late for honesty, I countered. Not too late for forgiveness. Is that what you want, Eleanor? My forgiveness? I considered the question carefully. I think what I want is understanding. For all of us. For Daniel most of all. Then I hope you find it, Helen said quietly. Before the end. After we hung up, I sat in silence, watching shadows lengthen across the garden. Helen's words echoed in my mind. Daniel was healing. Something broken inside him was mending. Could it really be so simple? Could my presence, however brief, really repair damage that had festered for decades? The next morning, Daniel appeared at my door earlier than usual, a large, flat package under his arm. I have something for you, he said, setting the package on my bed. Open it. Intrigued, I carefully unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a canvas, a painting of a lake house at sunset, golden light reflecting on still water. My painting, the one Helen had kept, that had hung in Daniel's summer home all these years. I don't understand, I said, running my fingers over the familiar brushstrokes. I want it to hang here, Daniel explained, where you can see it, where it belongs. I stared at him, overwhelmed. But it's yours. It's ours, he corrected. Part of our shared history. As I looked at the painting, at this artifact from my former self, this piece of beauty I'd created before grief and depression had consumed me, something shifted inside. For the first time in decades, I felt a flicker of recognition. This is who I was. This is who I might have remained in another life. Thank you, I whispered. Daniel nodded, then sat in the chair beside my bed, his expression serious. There's something I need to ask you. Of course. He hesitated, then plunged ahead. Do you want a funeral? When the time comes? If so, what kind? The question was like a splash of cold water, a stark reminder of why I was here. I hadn't thought about it, I admitted. I assumed I'd be cremated, my ashes scattered somewhere. No ceremony. Is that what you want? I considered the question honestly. I don't know. I've been alone so long. I didn't think anyone would want to commemorate my passing. You have family now, Daniel said quietly. People who will mourn you, who will need a way to say goodbye. The idea was startling, that my death would leave a void, that people would gather to honor my memory, that I would be missed. After decades of invisibility, the thought of being seen, even in death, was overwhelming. Whatever you think is best, I said finally. I trust your judgment. Daniel shook his head. This should be your choice, Mom. Your life, your death, your ceremony. Tell me what you want, and I'll make it happen. Mom. The word still gave me pause each time he used it. Still felt like an undeserved grace. I'd like something small, I said slowly. Just family. Perhaps at that lake where your father and I honeymooned. Somewhere beautiful and peaceful. Daniel nodded. All right, I'll arrange it. And your ashes? Scattered there, I think, in the lake. So part of me can stay in that place where we were truly happy. He made a note in his phone. And your apartment in Michigan? The things the movers haven't brought yet? Donate everything, I said without hesitation. There's nothing of value there, just the trappings of a life half-lived. Daniel looked up, his expression softening. You're not half-living now, Mom. Whatever time you have left, it's real. It matters. His words penetrated something deep inside me, some final barrier of self-protection. Why are you doing this, Daniel? Being so kind to me after everything I did? Planning my funeral? Caring for me in my final days? I don't deserve it. It's not about deserving, he said, echoing Rachel's words from the riverside. It's about healing, for both of us. But I'm the one who caused the wound in the first place. Yes, he acknowledged. You are. And knowing that, accepting responsibility for it, that's a form of atonement, the only kind possible now. I stared at him, this wise, compassionate man who had somehow emerged from the wreckage of our family. When did you get so insightful? A small smile crossed his face. Decades of therapy will do that. Despite everything, I laughed. I suppose it will. Daniel's expression turned serious again. I won't pretend I've completely forgiven you, Mom. That I don't still feel anger sometimes. But I'm working on it. And having you here, getting to know you, the real you, not the abandoning mother of my imagination. It's helping. And the girls? What do they think of having a dying grandmother suddenly appear in their lives? They're resilient, he said, and curious, especially Olivia. She says you're teaching her to really see the world. She already sees it, I replied. She has a gift. From you, Daniel pointed out. Your legacy living on in her. Legacy. The word resonated. What was my legacy? What would remain of Eleanor Mitchell when cancer finally claimed me? A few paintings. Some DNA carried forward in my granddaughters. Memories in the minds of the few who had known me. Mostly memories of absence, of abandonment. But perhaps, in these final weeks, I could add something else. Perhaps I could leave behind a different kind of memory, one of reconciliation, of honesty, of a woman who, at the very end, finally found the courage to face her family and her failures. I'd like to do something, I said suddenly, while I still can. What's that? Write letters. To you, to Rachel, to the girls, to Helen. Things I want you to have after I'm gone. Daniel nodded slowly. I think that would be good. For all of us. Will you help me? My hands shake so badly now and I tire so quickly. Of course, he said. Whenever you're ready. I looked out the window at the garden, at the autumn leaves beginning to turn, at the world continuing its timeless cycle of life and death, growth and decay. I'm ready now, I said softly, while I still have the strength. As Daniel went to fetch paper and pen, I realized I was facing, at last, the confrontation I'd avoided for 27 years. Not with my son, but with myself, with the truth of who I had been, who I had become, and who I might have been in another life. It was time to stop running, time to face the truth, however painful, time to claim my place in this family story, not as the villain or the victim, but as a flawed, human mother who had failed spectacularly, but was trying, at the very end, to make what amends she could. The days grew shorter as autumn deepened. My world contracted to the guest house, my strength fading like the year itself. Pain became my constant companion, dulled but never fully vanquished by medication. Still, there were moments of grace in each day. Olivia sitting by my bed, sharing her latest sketches, Emma reading aloud from her favorite books, Rachel stopping by after her hospital shifts, still in scrubs, to check my vital signs with professional kindness, Daniel working quietly on his laptop, keeping me company through long afternoons. I wrote my letters with Daniel's help, dictating words I'd held inside for decades. To Helen, acknowledgement of our shared mistakes and gratitude for raising my son. To Rachel, appreciation for her generous spirit and care of the family I'd abandoned. To Emma and Olivia, wisdom I wished I could have shared over a lifetime of birthday parties and graduations, holidays and ordinary days. And to Daniel, everything that remained unsaid between us, love and regret, pride and sorrow, all the complexity of a mother's heart. Keep these safe, I told Daniel when we finished the last one. For after. I will, he promised, sealing each envelope carefully. As Thanksgiving approached, Sarah, who had transferred to a local hospice service to continue my care, confirmed what I already knew. The end was near. Weeks, she said gently. Maybe less. I nodded, accepting. I'd like to be here for Thanksgiving if possible. With all of them. Sarah squeezed my hand. We'll do everything we can to manage your pain and keep you comfortable until then. That evening, I asked Daniel to help me into the main house for dinner, something I rarely attempted now, preferring to take meals in my room when I could eat at all. Are you sure? He asked, concerned by my pallor and labored breathing. We could eat with you in the guest house. I'm sure, I insisted. I want to sit at the table like a normal grandmother just once. He didn't argue, understanding the importance of normalcy in these final days. With his support, I made my way slowly to the main house, settling at the dining table with an effort that left me trembling, but triumphant. Grandma! Olivia exclaimed when she saw me. You're joining us! I wouldn't miss it, I said, smiling through the pain. Rachel appeared from the kitchen, surprise and concern flickering across her face before she smoothed her expression. This is a nice treat, she said, squeezing my shoulder as she passed. We've missed having you at the table. Emma set an extra place beside mine. I made your favorite salad, she announced, with the cranberries and walnuts. The meal passed in a blur of conversation and laughter, the girls recounting school dramas, Daniel discussing a case, Rachel sharing an anecdote about a particularly precocious patient. I ate little but absorbed everything, the easy affection between them, the inside jokes, the comfortable rhythms of a family that had formed without me, but was making space for me now. As Rachel and the girls cleared the dishes, Daniel refilled my water glass. "You're quiet tonight." "Just listening," I said, memorizing. His expression softened with understanding. "Making memories to take with you?" I nodded. "And leaving some behind, I hope." That night, after Daniel had helped me back to the guest house and made sure I was settled, I found myself unable to sleep despite the exhaustion weighing on every limb. Something felt unfinished, incomplete. I reached for the journal I'd kept since arriving in Connecticut. Another suggestion from Sarah to help process the emotional intensity of reconciliation while dying. "I came here to die surrounded by family," I wrote, my handwriting shaky but determined. "But what I've found instead is a reason to fully live, however briefly. I've spent decades existing in the shadows, punishing myself for failures that, while real, didn't warrant a life sentence of isolation. Only now, as death approaches, do I understand what I threw away. Not just my relationship with Daniel, but my own chance at joy, at connection, at meaning. If I could speak to my younger self, that broken woman who walked away from her sleeping son 27 years ago, I would tell her this. Depression lies. It tells you you're protecting those you love by leaving, when in fact you're only protecting yourself from the hard work of healing within relationship. It tells you you're irreparably damaged, when in fact you're simply human, with the same capacity for both harm and repair that all humans possess. I would tell her to stay. To get help? Yes. Intensive, professional help for her illness. But to stay connected to her son, to allow him to see her struggle and her recovery, to show him that mental illness, like any disease, can be treated, managed, survived. What a gift that would have been to both of us, to grow together through difficulty rather than apart in silence. But regret is a luxury I can no longer afford. My time is too precious now for anything but gratitude. Gratitude for Daniel's extraordinary capacity for forgiveness, for Rachel's generous spirit, for Emma and Olivia's unquestioning acceptance of a grandmother they barely know, for the chance to die as I should have lived, surrounded by love, however imperfect. I closed the journal, a peace settling over me that had nothing to do with medication. Something had shifted, some final piece of my long journey home. The next morning, Daniel found me sitting in the garden despite the November chill, wrapped in blankets but determined to feel the sun on my face. "You should be inside," he chided gently. "It's too cold out here." "Soon enough I'll be inside forever," I replied with a smile. "Let me have the sun while I can still feel it." He sat beside me, pulling his jacket closer against the brisk air. "Fair enough." We sat in comfortable silence, watching a pair of cardinals flit among the bare branches of a maple tree. "I've been thinking," Daniel said finally, "about time, how little of it we had together, and how much of what we did have was complicated." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I used to imagine finding you," he admitted. "When I was in law school, I even hired a private investigator once, but he couldn't locate you. This surprised me. You looked for me, briefly. I lost my nerve and called it off after a few weeks." He looked down at his hands. "I was afraid of what I might find, afraid you might reject me again." The pain of his words was sharp but clean. The truth, finally laid bare between us. "I would never have rejected you, Daniel," I said softly. "I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because I believed I was poison, because I thought you'd be better without me. I know that now," he said, "but I didn't then. All I knew was that my mother had walked out of my life without explanation, and nothing I did could bring her back. I'm so sorry," I whispered, the words inadequate but all I had. "If I could go back, but we can't," he interrupted gently. "We only have now, these days, these moments." I nodded, understanding. "And they're enough?" Daniel was silent for a long moment, considering. "Not enough," he finally said, "but something real." A cardinal landed on the garden wall nearby, its brilliant red plumage stark against the gray stone. We watched it in silence, this small miracle of color and life. "I have something for you," Daniel said suddenly, reaching into his jacket pocket. He withdrew the faded velvet box that held my old wedding ring. "I've been carrying this since we met at the river." I stared at the box, confused. I don't understand. Daniel opened it, revealing the gold band with its diamond and sapphires. This belongs to you, Mom. It always has. But I gave it back. I protested. I left it with Helen. Because you felt you didn't deserve it, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Because you were punishing yourself. I couldn't deny it. I think, Daniel continued, that you've punished yourself long enough, don't you? Tears filled my eyes as I looked at the ring, this symbol of a love lost, a family fractured, a life interrupted. I don't know if I can wear it, I admitted. My fingers are so thin now, and the swelling from the medications. You don't have to wear it, Daniel said. Just have it with you, as a reminder. Of what? That you were loved, that you loved, that despite everything, that part was real. I reached out with trembling fingers and touched the ring gently. Your father was a good man, Daniel. Before the depression took him, he loved you so much. I know, Daniel said quietly, and so did you, in your way, even when you left. The simple truth of his statement, his recognition of the love that had persisted even through abandonment and silence, broke something open inside me. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Yes, I whispered, always. Daniel took the ring from its box and placed it in my palm, closing my fingers around it. Keep it with you now, for whatever time is left. I clutched the ring, feeling its solid weight, this tangible piece of my former self, my former life. Thank you. 2 days later, on a clear, cold morning, I asked Sarah to help me dress and fix my wig. I'd like to see the girls before school, I explained. I have something for them. When Emma and Olivia arrived for their usual brief good morning visit, I was sitting up in bed, the ring box beside me, along with 2 small, wrapped packages. You look nice, Grandma, Emma observed, noticing my unusual effort. Special occasion, I said with a smile. Come sit. They perched on the edge of my bed, curious. I have something for each of you, I said, handing them the small packages. Early Christmas gifts, you might say. They unwrapped them carefully to reveal 2 jewelry boxes. Emma's contained a silver charm bracelet with a single charm, a tiny paintbrush. Olivia's held a delicate gold chain with a small locket, not my grandmother's, which had gone to Rachel, but a new one I'd asked Daniel to purchase for me. The bracelet was mine when I was your age, I told Emma. My father gave it to me when I won a school art contest. I've asked your father to add a charm each Christmas to mark the years. Emma fingered the bracelet, her expression solemn. Thank you. And the locket, I said to Olivia, is for you to fill with whatever matters most. A photo, a tiny sketch, a secret message, something precious to carry close to your heart. Olivia opened the locket to find it empty, waiting for her choice. It's beautiful, she said softly. I wish I had more to give you, I said, my voice catching. More time, more memories, more of myself. You've given us plenty, Emma said, surprising me with her perception. Dad says knowing where you come from helps you understand where you're going. I smiled through tears. Your father is very wise. He gets that from you, Olivia said matter-of-factly. The statement, so simple, so unexpected, left me speechless. After the girls had gone to school, promising to return in the afternoon, I felt a strange lightness. Some final piece had shifted into place. Some reconciliation not just with Daniel, but with myself. The woman I had been, the mother I had failed to be, the grandmother I was becoming in these final days. All were parts of a whole that was, if not redeemed, at least acknowledged. Seen. That afternoon, Daniel came to read to me, a ritual we'd established, his voice carrying me through books I no longer had the strength to hold. But today, instead of our usual novel, he brought a leather-bound journal. What's this? I asked. Your journal, he said. The one Sarah suggested you keep. You left it in the main house yesterday. Oh, I'd been increasingly forgetful as the disease and medications progressed. Would you put it away for me? Actually, he said, his voice hesitant. I was wondering if I could read some of it, if that would be all right. The request surprised me. Why would you want to? Because there's still so much I don't know about you, he said simply, about how you see the world, how you've experienced these past weeks, and there's so little time left to learn. I considered his request. The journal contained my most private thoughts, my rawest emotions. But wasn't that precisely what Daniel deserved to know? The truth of who his mother was, in her own words? Yes, I said finally. You can read it, all of it. Relief flickered across his face. "Thank you." I watched as he opened to the first page and began to read silently, his expression changing subtly as he absorbed my words. My reflections on our reunion, my descriptions of his daughters, my memories of his father, my regrets and hopes and fears. After several pages, he looked up, his eyes wet. It means a lot to read this." I nodded, understanding. "There's more I want to tell you, but my strength, I know," he said gently. "This helps, hearing your voice on the page." An idea occurred to me. "Would you read some aloud? I'd like to hear the words in your voice." Daniel smiled. "Of course." He turned back to the beginning and began to read, his voice steady and warm. As he spoke my words back to me, my thoughts on seeing him again after so long, my observations of his extraordinary family, my gratitude for this unexpected grace at the end of my life, I felt a profound sense of completion, of coming full circle. When he paused, emotion making it difficult to continue, I reached for his hand. "It's all right," I said softly. "We don't have to say everything. Some things are understood without words." He nodded, squeezing my hand. We sat in companionable silence as the afternoon light faded, the space between us filled not with regret or recrimination, but with a quiet acceptance, an acknowledgement of what had been lost, what had been found, what would soon end. 3 days later, on Thanksgiving morning, I woke feeling different. The pain was distant, as if it belonged to someone else. My thoughts were unusually clear. The fog of medication temporarily lifted. I knew with a certainty that required no explanation that this would be my last day. Sarah recognized it too when she came for her morning check. "I'll call Dr. Michaels," she said after examining me. "And your family. Tell them not to rush," I said. "Let them have their morning." But of course they came immediately. Daniel pale and composed, Rachel practical and gentle, the girls solemn but present. "Happy Thanksgiving," I said, when they gathered around my bed, trying to inject normalcy into the heavy atmosphere. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom," Daniel replied, taking my hand. The day passed in a gentle rhythm of visitors, sometimes all of them, sometimes just one or two. I drifted in and out of consciousness, but each time I opened my eyes, someone was there. Daniel reading from my journal, Rachel adjusting my pillows with professional care, Emma holding my hand silently, Olivia sketching in the corner, looking up periodically to study my face, preserving it on paper. As evening fell, I asked for a moment alone with Daniel. The others withdrew tactfully, leaving my son sitting beside my bed, his face showing the strain of anticipated grief. "I have one more thing to give you," I said, my voice barely audible now. In my bedside drawer, he opened it to find my wedding ring, which I'd kept close since he'd returned it to me. "Mom, this is yours, and now it's yours again," I whispered. "Not to keep, but to return. I don't understand." "When I'm gone," I explained, "I want you to take it to Harbor Springs, to that lake where your father and I were happy, where you'll scatter my ashes." Daniel nodded, understanding dawning. "You want me to leave the ring there too?" "Yes. Return it to the place where our family began, before everything went wrong." "I will," he promised. "Emma and Olivia can help. Make it a family pilgrimage." Family. The word wrapped around me like a warm blanket. Despite everything, I would die belonging to someone, to several someones, not alone, as I had lived for so long. "Daniel," I said, gathering my failing strength, "I need you to know something." "What's that, Mom?" "I forgive myself," I whispered. "Finally, for leaving, for staying away, for all of it." Tears filled his eyes. "I'm glad." "And you?" I asked, needing to hear it one last time. "Can you forgive me too?" Daniel was quiet for a long moment, his face reflecting the complex emotions of our shared history. Then he leaned forward and pressed his lips to my forehead, just as I had done to him the day I left. "I forgive you," he whispered, his tears falling onto my cheek. Then he placed my old wedding ring in my hand, closing my fingers around it gently. "I forgive you, Mom." And with those words, the words I'd waited 27 years to hear, I felt the final piece of my broken heart slide into place. Not healed completely, not in the time remaining, but acknowledged, accepted, forgiven. I died 3 days later, in the early hours of a December morning, with Daniel holding my hand and Rachel monitoring my fading vital signs. It was peaceful, they told the girls later, a gentle slipping away. The following spring, as I had requested, my family gathered at Harbor Springs, at the lake where Robert and I had honeymooned so many years before. Daniel, Rachel, Emma, and Olivia stood at the water's edge as the morning sun gilded the gentle waves. Daniel opened the urn containing my ashes, while Emma held the small velvet box with my wedding ring. "I forgive you," my son whispered one last time. Then he placed my old wedding ring in my hand, or what remained of it, and released us both into the waiting waters. And as my ashes merged with the lake that had witnessed the beginning of my family story, something was completed. Something was healed. Something was finally, after decades of brokenness, made whole.